Hello there, and happy Spookyween, ghouls and gals! And well, don't worry too much, I'm not here to scare you today. Isn't it great? The best holiday of the world is upon us. The veil between our world and the next one is thinning, and the dead are crossing over to our world. Monsters and witches are roaming the streets, demanding candy and stuff. It's just great! So I want to celebrate this happy but mischievous holiday with my favorite pastime, video games. There's a lot of great games out there, some spooky, some eerie, some outright terrifying. Today though, I don't want to talk about the bloody and gory, the M-rated horror games. I want to highlight the more lighthearted games, where spookiness comes with a bit of fun, where your heart isn't pounding in your chest, but where the macabre makes you chuckle, just a bit. It's still all about ghouls and ghosts, monsters and, well, other creepy stuff. I want to showcase the games that celebrate the Halloween time or carry the Halloween spirit. So let's take a look at a small selection of awesome games for Halloween. And let's hit things off with the Halloween scenario of Viscera Cleanup Detail. This one isn't really spooky or tense. There's actually nothing at all going on, because all the interesting stuff has already happened. We are part of a cleaning contractor and arrived at the scene of a horrible murder. There's blood and gore everywhere, as well as all kinds of references to horror and slasher movies, and you have to pick up all the trash, viscera and even the evidence, and dispose of it, and don't forget to mop up all the blood. The Viscera cleanup games are fun little time wasters that can be a bit frustrating at times when you trip over your bucket and spill all the blood over the carpet, or when you bump into walls, tables and chairs and doors while carrying corpses and leave bloody traces all over the place. This isn't the most polished or engaging experience, but perfect for when you want some morbid fun. Next up is Outbound Ghost. Imagine Paper Mario, but as a spooky ghost. Well, not that spooky. While the setup of this game is quite gruesome, with a whole village having been wiped out by a serial killer, the game itself is rather lighthearted. You are this cute little ghost that suffers from amnesia and now just tries to find its way in the world, solve the mystery of its past or something. The game doesn't give you the most detailed introduction. You kinda just follow the road in front of you and meet all kinds of other bizarre ghosts who are sometimes friendly, sometimes wary of you, and sometimes require your help. When you're not out making new friends, you're fighting all kinds of nasty apparitions in turn-based combat with action commands and special abilities that you have to equip to your party members. So again, kinda like Mario Party? The fuck? Why did I write this? Kinda like Paper Mario, just not as polished or thought through. While you can pull off some neat tactics during fights, more often than not the combat can be quite mindless and monotonous, and the action commands are always the same, wait for the meter to fill up and press at the right moment affairs, so there's not much variety in here to keep the fights fresh. Even worse, some attacks have the meter fill up quite erratically, which makes hitting the sweet spot more of a guessing game and disincentivizes the use of certain attacks. Still, a fun little casual RPG in the style of Paper Mario that for some reason doesn't get copied that often. What's better than exploring haunted houses in a dark and stormy night? Well, haunting them yourself. I mean, what better captures the mischievous spirit of Halloween than giving unsuspecting victims a good scare? Enter Haunt the House Terrortown. This is such a wholesome game, kinda. You're this cute little ghost that haunts different places and tries to drive off all the people living there with this adorable boo sound that's not scary at all. So in order to achieve your goal, you have to possess all kinds of different objects and furniture to really scare everyone who comes close. Each object produces a different effect and you have to wait for the right moment to strike for maximum effect. This goes wrong a few times and people actually die. But it's fine, because this is the little ghost's family and he just wants to reunite them. So yeah, there's something quite dark when it comes to this game's story, but it's presented in such a lighthearted and silly way. So perfect for a silly and lighthearted holiday celebrating the dead. Another game where you haunt different places and possess all kinds of objects to scare away the living is Ghostmaster. But while Haunt the House was a character-driven, hands-on experience, this game plays more like a strategy or management game. You have a tactical overhead viewpoint of the whole stage so that you can see every room and every, let's call them victims, all vantage points and bonus objectives. You can click on all the humans to read up on their fears and behaviors, so that you can deploy the right haunters in the right places. Your spider ghost that sends its many children after the humans is always a good opener to cause some early frights and generate spook power that you need to summon more ghosts and have them use stronger abilities. And you really need to deploy your ghosts tactically to really cause the humans to panic and have them run away screaming. Use your gremlin to blow the fuses near the human who's afraid in the dark. Torment the paranoid with a poltergeist that creates sounds of footstep and distant laughter. Every human has this one perfect scare opportunity, but it's not always easy or possible to create these moments. Maybe the correct ghost isn't in your active roster. Maybe the human never steps into the room where the scare needs to happen. But that's not too bad, because there are always multiple ways to complete your goal, and often enough, brute force is a valid approach. A great premise and a fun game, but a flawed one. A staple of the Halloween holiday is of course trick-or-treating. Children of all ages dress up as all kinds of monsters and go around pestering the neighbors for candy. Want to experience this in video game form? Well, I might have a game for you. Costume Quest. Double Fine's silly, spooky RPG celebrates everything Halloween. This game even takes place on Halloween and you play as a pair of siblings going trick-or-treating in DIY costumes. But then some goofy goblin creatures kidnap one of the two and the other one now has to assemble a team of friends, gather materials to build even more DIY costumes and fight the evil goblins in hilarious imaginary battles, where the costumes transform the children into giant monsters or robots or other crazy things who fight with all kinds of magic and crazy weaponry. While this game doesn't offer too much depth or variety, it really sells the Halloween feeling, dressing up, collecting candy and getting immersed in a bit of childish Halloween fantasy. The game had a sequel that pretty much played the same, but expanded a bit more on the exploration. Both games are a lot of fun, especially when you want to get into the Halloween spirit. But if you'd rather play something slower, more methodic, something to get the noggin jogging, then let's take a look at Haunted. This is a German adventure game from everyone's favorite developer Deck 13, known for well-polished, high-quality games, and this one is no exception. In Haunted, you assume the role of Mary, who's been able to see ghosts since her sister died, and who has to escape the clutches of Lady Ashcroft, who researches ghosts and wants to experiment on her. So now you have to solve a bunch of puzzles that are sometimes more and sometimes less logically sound, but all of them require creative solutions. No, you can't grab the electrified sword with the rubber gloves. You have to trick a ghost into retrieving it. You can't just cut a rope and drop a cannon on a ship. You have to fill the barrel with cement and then light the fuse. In addition to a bunch of seemingly useless items, par for the course for adventure games, you have to recruit a bunch of ghosts, each with their own outrageous personality and a unique ability to interact with the world around them. From a gameplay perspective, they function just like any other item, but the way they're implemented adds to the game's charm. And speaking of charm, all the different environments are colorful in a gloomy way. and full of detail. The cutscenes and character animations though are a bit awkward and clumsy, even though the game advertised its sophisticated facial expressions for the time. The voice acting is quite bad, but again in a kind of charming way.
Willy, 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 I want to say Willy.
Hey, I'm famous in Scotland.
And the writing tries to be witty without much success. But there are some bangers in here, like the nymphomaniac cock. The puzzles are a bit on the easy side, but still quite enjoyable, and the whole setting is a treat for the Halloween season. And if this game couldn't satisfy your hunger for adventure games, you might wanna look at A Vampyre Story. A beautiful little adventure game about an opera singer turned vampire trapped in a gloomy castle that is accompanied by a foul-mouthed bat. In typical adventure fashion, you collect all kinds of random items to solve puzzles in hilariously outrageous ways. Dialogues are witty, well-voiced and with superb comedic timing to help you through some of the more infuriating, moon logic-filled trial and error sections.
We'll fix it next time, I think. Signed RM. Man, this guy must be a doctor. I can barely read this note.
Fine, we'll think of something.
Yeah, you do that. Anything else?
No, that is enough.
Hey, I can never get enough of talking to you, honey pie.
While the characters are in 3D and not bad looking thanks to the stylized designs, the backgrounds are hand-painted and they look really great. This combined with a pretty good soundtrack creates a kind of dark fairy tale atmosphere. The game's really fun, but good luck getting it to work on modern systems. I tried for over an hour with all kinds of patches, fixes, external programs and editor shenanigans. Nothing would work. And then I discovered that the game runs perfectly well on my Steam Deck. So I captured all my footage there, so be aware of that. HorrorVale. While I don't regard most games made with the RPG Maker as anything more than cheap shit, once and again a game emerges that's an actual work of passion, full of creative and fresh ideas, an interesting presentation and a style that's not completely overused. Such a game is HorrorVale. Well, for now it's only a demo, but this game has been actively worked on, so I'm in good spirits about it. In this game, you play as Alice, a teenage girl who's also dead. But that's not so bad, because pretty much everyone is dead in the underworld. She's a skeleton from Skeleton Manor, who one day went out for mischief and adventure, when her zombie dog ran off and now she has to find it. For that she has to explore the town of HorrorVale, recruit spooky friends, fight evil spirits and other annoying jerks, and even experience a bit of horror. It's a charming and colorful adventure that's not at all perfect, but it's good old lighthearted fun, and it uses its Halloween setting superb. I mean, you use your healing spell exclusively to damage enemies. You have to poison yourself if you want to recover HP. I'm really looking forward to the full release. Next up is Rare's answer to Nintendo's Luigi's Mansion. Well, not quite. While Grab It by the Ghoulies is another cartoonish action-adventure where you have to explore a haunted mansion that houses all kinds of wacky monsters to rescue a loved one, this game has, gameplay-wise, more in common with, let's say, Streets of Rage than with Luigi's Mansion. This game behaves a bit like a brawler. You move from screen to screen and defeat every enemy before you move on to the next screen, in more or less linear fashion. While you can break most objects inside a room and search for health and power-ups as well as collectibles, there isn't really any emphasis on exploration in this game. The route you take through the mansion is mostly predetermined and you just follow along. There isn't really an option to turn back, and in those instances where it is possible, you don't gain anything from it. All the rooms you enter have a fixed place inside the mansion, and there is a logical way to the order in which you traverse them, but mostly the mansion is just window dressing. This could have been a side-scroller with slightly different backgrounds every few screens and it wouldn't have made a difference. That said, the mansion is a highly entertaining set piece, and you encounter all kinds of caricatures of classic monsters. Skeletons and zombies, hunchbacks and ghost pirates, mummies and medusas, rats and spiders. Even death himself appears to end your life. You fight with a massive arsenal of makeshift weapons similar to Zombies Ate My Neighbors, and even some quite impressive wrestling moves. And of course there's a huge dose of Rare's trademark gallows humor. A fun game indeed, but a bit wonky and unfair at times. Rare certainly created a unique experience, but it didn't quite manage to live up to their legacy. Though I guess today this game would be appreciated a lot more than when it first released and fans of the British developer were still sour due to them leaving Nintendo for Microsoft. Yo dudes and dudettes, go grab some water guns and some radical 3D glasses and fight some zombies, mummies, which are just bandaged up zombies if you think about it, vampires and werewolves, and of course, save the cheerleaders. And well, the rest of the neighbors. This game is pure arcade goodness. Play alone or in 2-player co-op through nearly 50 levels in suburban neighborhoods, where the titular neighbors reside. Monster-infested malls, gloomy castles and dark Egyptian tombs, where you fight against all kinds of classic movie monsters as well as slasher killers. Masked chainsaw murderers stalk you through hedge mazes, possessed dolls ambush you in the mall, body snatchers grow out of giant plants, and even Martians are here to abduct the cheerleaders. Those bastards. To fight all those monstrosities, you get to utilize a bunch of different tools and weapons. From water guns to fire extinguishers to ice cream and even silverware, which is exceptionally potent against werewolves. None of this is played straight. Everything's a silly joke, a funny reference towards a classic monster movie, or just plain stupid. This is the ultimate monster showdown, presented in one of the most lighthearted ways possible. Kinda like the holiday of Halloween itself. A similar game is Monster Madness, Battle for Suburbia. To me, it's kind of a spiritual sequel to Zombies Ate My Neighbors, more so than Ghoul Patrol. You can play on your own or with up to 3 friends and battle your way through hordes of zombies and other undead monstrosities to save the neighborhood. While you have to achieve goals and reach certain points within the levels instead of saving your neighbors, the essence of Zombie Ate My Neighbors is strong in this game. It's just monster bashing goodness with a ton of different melee weapons and throwables, and even some special abilities and vehicles during some set pieces. The game can be quite janky and isn't always the most fair, but the chaos on screen when you play with your friends is pure joy. And just to be thorough, I wanted to mention Zombie Playground, an arcade game where you can play solo or in online co-op, and where you have to battle hordes of zombies inside a school with a baseball bat and, surely as a reference, a pair of trusty water guns. By defeating the shambling undead and completing missions, you earn points that you can spend on cosmetics like outfits or weapon skins. It's a bit mindless but fun enough, and surely a good time with some friends. The next game is a big one. Mario's green-headed brother stepped out of his older sibling's shadow and into the spotlight as player one for not really the first time, but well, actually successful for the first time. This game shaped Luigi's personality as we know it today. Before that, he was just Green Mario, with sometimes maybe a different jump arc. But here, he became the scared but brave hero, who faces his greatest fears to save his brother. With this game, he became a character. He had a personality, much more so than his older brother. The game itself is an action-adventure set in a haunted house and has a lot of similarities with survival horror games, mostly due to its setting, like Resident Evil games or Alone in the Dark. Instead of running and jumping, Luigi slowly creeps through the spooky mansion, and he doesn't defeat his enemies with a stomp on the head, but by blinding them with his flashlight and then sucking them into his trusty Poltergust 3000, Ghostbuster style, that you control kinda like a slow twin-stick shooter. You need to solve puzzles and search through every nook and cranny to find keys and other helpful items, to open up more rooms inside the mansion, to find even more keys to unlock more doors. Every major ghost requires you to solve some puzzle to make them vulnerable to your poltergeist attack, and thorough exploration grants you incredible riches. Couple that with a dark and tense atmosphere, where you slowly make your way through cramped and winding hallways, where ghosts suddenly appear out of the shadows, where Luigi hums the background theme in an increasingly frightened way depending on his health. And you get the perfect game for a dark Halloween night. Or any other night. Luigi's Mansion is awesome, and its 2 sequels, while not as good as the first game, are still a blast to play. The second game went for a mission-based approach that threw you back to the menu after completing a mission and had you explore the same areas over and over. The exploration itself was still fun, it just got repetitive quite fast because of the mission-based gameplay. The game also lacked the more sophisticated ghosts from the first game that required puzzle solving to make them vulnerable. The third game took place in a huge haunted hotel, and it tried to merge the gameplay styles of the first 2 games. And for the first hour or so it worked quite well, with you only having access to the first and second floor as well as the basement, and have to move back and forth to solve some puzzles, and everything seemed quite interconnected. But soon enough, each floor becomes a self-contained area with its own puzzles and encounters. One floor is a casino, another one is a gym, the next is an Egyptian tomb, and yet another one is a pirate-themed island resort, including an ocean to sail through on a pirate ship. At least the game brought back the puzzle ghost fights, with a boss encounter on every floor of the hotel. Still, even though both sequels offer a lot of fun, none of them create this eerie atmosphere of the first game. That one managed to actually be quite scary at times. For a children's game, that is. And let me at this point mention The Haunt. This Xbox Kinect game always gave me Luigi's Mansion vibes. It's kind of a spiritual motion control sequel to Luigi's Mansion. In this game, you also explore a spooky mansion full of goofy looking and behaving ghosts, sometimes even in non-linear fashion. You have to solve puzzles and find keys to open up new areas and search every shelf and drawer, cabinet and cupboard, box and pot for valuable items. Instead of sucking up ghosts with your vacuum, you instead have to challenge them in a fist fight, where you have to observe their movements and skillfully block and dodge and hit back at the right moment for massive damage. You can also point your flashlight at them to drain their health, which feels at least a tiny bit like Luigi's Mansion. All of this is done with the Kinect's motion recognition, where the camera creates a kind of skeletal shape from your silhouette and your movements. This was quite a sophisticated system that never got utilized all too much or too well. And I'm not saying that it works perfectly well all the time, but it does a fine job with this game. You have to walk in place to move, and the speed at which you move your legs determines your movement speed within the game. Your right hand controls the flashlight, and by that your viewpoint. Interacting with objects is just a matter of hovering your flashlight hand over them. Cancelling an action has you holding your left arm in a 45-degree angle away from your body. To open doors you have to pull or push with either one or both hands. The game even utilizes the Kinect's microphone and photo mode to mess with you at certain moments. For a budget price Xbox Live Arcade indie title, this game offers a lot of variety and fun, and it's a game I genuinely enjoy returning to every Halloween. Hoo boy, these were already some great or at least unique and interesting spooky games. And I'm sure there's still a lot of other games out there that are perfect for the Halloween season. I can't mention them all, I don't know them all. But to end this video on a high note, let's talk about two more games that deserve to be regarded as Halloween classics. The first one is Pumpkin Jack. Become Jack Skellington, a damned soul trapped in the body of a scarecrow with a pumpkin for a head, sent back from hell to haunt the living and conquer the world for the forces of evil, in this comical platforming action game. This may sound weird, but it works actually quite well. Try to think of it as MediEvil light. You traverse a cartoonishly stylized world haunted by nightmarish forces and slay humans and monsters alike as a sadistic and mischievous spectre. Each level has its own distinct looks, comes with its own gimmicks and ends with a spectacular boss fight that has more in common with Zelda than with Devil May Cry. Jack's arsenal ranges from a shovel or a spear to a boomstick and, most befitting for an angry spirit about to conquer all of humanity, a scythe. While you are clearly evil in this game and on a crusade to bring the end of the world, the game plays this generally lighthearted, with a dark and sinister kind of comedy. Skeletons waddle towards you and tumble to the ground in pieces after defeat, and humans are hilariously inept. This conquest even pits you against the ultimate good spirit in a battle to prove once and for all the superiority of Halloween over Christmas when you fight Santa himself, all while an Elfman-esque soundtrack accompanies the silly carnage. The game isn't perfect, it's actually quite janky in a lot of places and it's not very long, but the perfect treat for a dark and stormy Halloween night. The second game, well, I already mentioned it, and since it hasn't appeared in this video yet, I think it should come to no one's surprise that the last game for today is MediEvil. The OG Halloween game. Well, not really. There have been humorous and childish horror and monster games before, but this game checks all the boxes. A macabre yet funny, gloomy yet colorful presentation with all kinds of spooky monsters like zombies, scarecrows or pumpkin freaks, where we play as a doofus knight who has risen from the dead to get a second chance at being a hero, something he completely messed up the first time around. So now we have to traverse this fairy tale world with crooked architecture and horribly deformed inhabitants, drenched in the perpetual darkness of a never-ending night. The game could not be any less similar to a Tim Burton movie, even without the music very reminiscent of, once again, Danny Elfman. We hack and slash ourselves through creepy cemeteries and mausoleums, spooky farms and forests or dark towns and castles. And each level puts its own spin on the action platformer genre. Some levels are more puzzle heavy, some require more actual platforming, some focus on exploration, some want you to fight harder, some want you to fight smarter, and some want you to avoid fighting altogether. Which sounds great if the game wasn't so incredibly janky. Holy shit, this game can ruin your day. Still, it's one of the classics and for good reason. While not necessarily impressive on a technical level, the art design, the hilarious plot and the many creative ideas within this game make it a beloved, flawed gem for many gamers. And if you can ignore all the jank, you'll get the perfect Halloween experience out of this. The perfect gloomy atmosphere spiced with lots of infantile humor. Pretty much every environment imaginable for this setting, as well as many of the expected monsters. Pumpkin Jack might have been the more fitting protagonist, but the sheer amount of Halloween stuff on display in this game just takes the cake. The only thing missing would be the candy. But well, maybe I can help with that.